Welcome back to Mystery Minds, the channel where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, uncovering stories that shock, intrigue, and leave us questioning the world around us. In today's case, we bring you a chilling and twisted tale, one of betrayal, deception, and a deadly obsession. This is the story of the Christmas Killer, a case that stunned a small town. A tale of heartbreak, secrets, and a brutal holiday crime. This case will leave you wondering, how could a season of joy turn into a season of terror? And who could be behind such a cruel and calculated act? Stay with us as we unravel the dark and tragic story of the Christmas Killer, a case that stunned a small town. It was December 1994, and the small, picturesque town of Pine Hollow was blanketed in snow. Twinkling Christmas lights adorned every street corner, but beneath the festive cheer, a chilling secret lurked. The disappearance of a beloved teacher on Christmas Eve would unravel a horrifying truth, one that would haunt Pine Hollow for years to come. Pine Hollow, a picturesque town nestled in the heart of Wisconsin, was the kind of place where everyone knew one another and life felt simple and predictable. Every December, the town transformed into a winter wonderland, with snow-covered streets, twinkling lights, and a bustling Christmas market that brought everyone together. The highlight of the season was always the Christmas Eve parade, a cherished tradition where families gathered to celebrate the joy and warmth of the holidays. But in 1994, that joy turned into heartbreak, and the sense of security Pine Hollow prided itself on was shattered forever. Eleanor Davis was a beloved figure in the community, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher whose kindness and dedication had earned her the admiration of students and parents alike. She was known for her love of Christmas, often going above and beyond to make the season magical for her class. That year, she had stayed late at school on Christmas Eve, preparing handmade decorations and gifts for her students. She was last seen leaving a local bakery just after sunset, carrying a box of Christmas cookies she had picked up for her family. When Eleanor didn't show up to her parents' house for their annual Christmas Eve dinner, her family grew concerned. It was unlike her to miss an event, especially during the holidays. Calls to her home went unanswered, and by the following morning, panic began to set in. Her car was discovered abandoned near Pine Lake, a quiet spot just outside town often frequented by locals for ice skating and winter strolls. The sight was strange and unsettling. The driver's door was wide open, and Eleanor's purse sat undisturbed on the passenger seat, with her wallet and keys still inside. The discovery prompted a search that grew larger with each passing hour. The entire town came together, combing the frozen lake and surrounding woods for any trace of Eleanor. Volunteers worked tirelessly despite the freezing temperatures, their determination fueled by the hope that she might still be alive. Search dogs were brought in, helicopters hovered above the snow-dusted treetops, and every lead, no matter how small, was pursued. Yet, as Christmas Day faded into night, there was still no sign of her. The festive spirit that had filled Pine Hollow just days earlier had been replaced by a heavy, unshakable sense of dread. Rumors began to swirl among the townsfolk. Some speculated that Eleanor had slipped on the icy paths and fallen into the lake, while others feared something far more sinister. Her disappearance felt too deliberate, too chillingly out of character for the responsible and reliable teacher everyone knew. The pristine snow surrounding her car revealed no clear footprints or signs of a struggle, leaving investigators baffled. How could someone vanish so completely without leaving behind even a trace? As the days passed, the mystery only deepened, and the close-knit community began to feel the strain. Parents kept their children indoors, and doors that had once been left unlocked were now bolted tight. The joy of the holiday season was replaced by an eerie silence, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Eleanor Davis, the woman who had brought so much light to Pine Hollow, had disappeared into the dark, cold night without explanation. And yet, everyone could sense that this was not a random accident. Something far more menacing was at play. 3 days after Eleanor Davis vanished, the small town of Pine Hollow received news that sent shockwaves through the community. A group of teenagers skating on Pine Lake stumbled upon something frozen beneath the ice, something that didn't belong. At first, they thought it was debris, perhaps a forgotten holiday decoration blown into the lake by the wind. But as they skated closer, the sight made them stop in their tracks. A bloodied Santa hat, its vibrant red contrasting sharply against the pale blue ice, lay trapped just below the surface. The authorities were called immediately, and the lake was quickly cordoned off as investigators began the grim task of breaking through the thick layer of ice. The biting cold and rising tension created an unbearable stillness, broken only by the rhythmic sound of tools chipping away at the frozen surface. A small crowd of townspeople gathered nearby, their breath visible in the icy air as they waited in stunned silence. What lay beneath the ice, concealed in the frigid water, would provide the first real clue in Eleanor's mysterious disappearance. After what felt like an eternity, the ice gave way. What emerged was nothing short of horrifying. Eleanor Davis's lifeless body was pulled from the water, her pale skin a stark contrast to the bright red ribbon binding her wrists. The festive detail was both disturbing and surreal, a cruel mockery of the holiday season. The once beloved teacher, whose life had been filled with kindness and joy, had met a fate that was both violent and deeply unsettling. The initial examination of Eleanor's body revealed troubling details. She had been strangled before being submerged in the lake. The ribbon tied around her wrists wasn't ordinary, it was elaborate, decorative, something meant to adorn a gift, not a person. But the most perplexing discovery was tucked into her coat pocket, a small wooden ornament shaped like a snowflake, intricately carved and unlike anything sold in Pine Hollow's shops. The ornament raised immediate questions. Was it a message? A clue left by the killer? Or simply an object meant to confuse investigators? The discovery of Eleanor's body and the unsettling details surrounding it plunged Pine Hollow into deeper fear. The town's festive cheer evaporated entirely, replaced by a sense of vulnerability that felt alien to its residents. The image of Eleanor, bound with Christmas ribbon and left beneath the ice, became impossible to shake. Whispers of speculation and fear spread quickly. Was the murderer someone from outside the town, or could the culprit be someone they knew and trusted? The idea that one of their own could commit such a heinous act was too horrifying to consider, yet impossible to ignore. As the investigation deepened, detectives faced more questions than answers. The frozen lake offered no immediate evidence of how Eleanor's body had ended up there. The fresh snow on the surrounding ground had long since erased any potential footprints or tracks. No one had reported hearing or seeing anything unusual on the night of her disappearance, leaving authorities to piece together a puzzle with missing edges. Rumors began to swirl among the residents. Some believed Eleanor had been the victim of a drifter, someone passing through Pine Hollow who saw an opportunity and acted on it. Others suspected the crime was far more personal. The ornament, in particular, became a point of fascination. Its detailed craftsmanship suggested it had been handmade, leading police to wonder if the killer had left a signature, or worse, a taunt. The autopsy confirmed what many feared. Eleanor had fought for her life. Bruising around her neck indicated she had been strangled with significant force, and her wrist showed signs of struggle against the ribbon that bound them. The cold water had preserved her body, offering critical forensic clues but also intensifying the horror of her final moments. Despite these findings, investigators were no closer to understanding the motive behind the crime. As leads grew thin and the town's anxiety deepened, another question lingered unanswered. Why Eleanor? She was kind, unassuming, and had no known enemies. Yet someone had gone to great lengths to end her life in a way that felt calculated, even symbolic. The haunting image of the ornament, the bloodied Santa hat, and the festive ribbon painted a picture of a killer who had carefully planned every detail. Despite the growing suspicions and fear, one truth became increasingly clear. Eleanor's death wasn't random. Someone had chosen her, and whoever it was had gone to chilling lengths to cover their tracks. As Pine Hollow braced itself for what might come next, one question echoed louder than all the others. Was the killer still among them? The joyous image of Christmas was now a haunting reminder of tragedy. Pine Hollow's innocence had been shattered, and the discovery of Eleanor's body marked the beginning of a case so chilling, so incomprehensible, that it would leave everyone questioning not only what had happened but also who among them could be capable of such a monstrous act. The murder of Eleanor Davis sent shockwaves through Pine Hollow, leaving its residents desperate for answers. As the initial shock faded, investigators began peeling back the layers of her seemingly simple life. What they uncovered was a series of secrets that painted a far more complicated picture of the beloved schoolteacher and her relationships within the tight-knit community. The first major discovery came from Eleanor's closest friend, who revealed that Eleanor had been receiving anonymous threatening letters for months before her death. These notes, written in bold, blocky handwriting, warned her to stay away from what isn't yours. At first, Eleanor had dismissed them as the ramblings of a prankster, but the tone of the messages had grown increasingly hostile. She hadn't confided in many people about the notes, likely because she didn't want to alarm anyone. Now, the letters loomed large as a potential clue, suggesting that someone had been watching her and perhaps planning her murder for quite some time. The investigation took another twist when detectives learned about a secret relationship Eleanor had recently ended. For nearly a year, she had been romantically involved with Greg Harper, a wealthy and influential businessman in Pine Hollow. Greg, a married man with deep ties to the community, had managed to keep the affair hidden from his wife, Linda, and most of the town. According to Eleanor's friend, she had ended the relationship just weeks before her murder, telling Greg that she couldn't continue living a life built on lies. This revelation cast a shadow over Greg, raising suspicions about how far he might go to keep his indiscretions from unraveling his carefully curated life. When questioned, Greg admitted to the affair but vehemently denied any involvement in Eleanor's death. He claimed that he had spent Christmas Eve at home with Linda, watching holiday movies and exchanging gifts. However, Linda's behavior during her interview with investigators raised red flags. She was composed but cold, her answers precise to the point of feeling rehearsed. Several neighbors reported hearing heated arguments from the Harpers' home in the weeks leading up to Christmas, and others mentioned that Linda had seemed unusually withdrawn at community events. While Greg appeared to cooperate with the investigation, Linda's demeanor left detectives wondering if she was hiding something or protecting someone. As investigators dug deeper into Greg's alibi, another lead emerged. The intricately carved snowflake ornament found on Eleanor's body became a focal point of the case. After canvassing local artisans, searching for anyone who might recognize the design, police traced the ornament to Oliver Grayson, a reclusive woodcarver who lived on the outskirts of town. Oliver was an enigmatic figure in Pine Hollow, known for his craftsmanship, but rarely seen in social settings. His work was celebrated for its detail, and the ornament matched his signature style. Oliver quickly became a person of interest. Yet, when questioned, Oliver admitted to crafting a batch of similar ornaments earlier that year, but claimed he had no connection to Eleanor and no memory of selling or gifting one to her or anyone else. Oliver's isolated lifestyle and eccentric reputation made him an easy target for suspicion. Rumors began spreading throughout the town, branding him as the likely killer. Yet, despite his oddities, there was no evidence directly linking him to Eleanor's murder. Still, the idea that someone so withdrawn and mysterious could be responsible took hold in the minds of Pine Hollow's residents. Oliver, now under intense scrutiny, found himself ostracized and fearful for his safety. While Oliver remained a key suspect, detectives were reluctant to dismiss other possibilities. Greg Harper's motive was clear. If Eleanor had threatened to reveal their affair, his reputation and marriage would have been destroyed. However, the investigation also hinted at Linda's potential involvement. A scorned wife discovering her husband's betrayal could easily be driven to drastic measures. Both had motive, yet neither had an airtight alibi. The deeper the investigators dug, the murkier the case became. The anonymous threats, the ornament, the affair, and the strained dynamics in the Harper household all pointed to a tangled web of emotions: jealousy, rage, and betrayal. But the lack of physical evidence left authorities grasping at straws. Was the murderer a calculated planner who had covered their tracks, or had they simply been lucky enough to evade detection? The residents of Pine Hollow began to turn on one another, their once close community now fractured by fear and mistrust. People whispered about the Harpers' volatile relationship, about Oliver's peculiar behavior, and about whether there were other secrets Eleanor had kept hidden. As the days turned into weeks, the urgency to solve the case grew, but so did the tension among the townsfolk. As the investigation into Eleanor Davis's murder dragged on, the residents of Pine Hollow grew restless. Whispers of suspicion and blame swirled through the town like the winter winds, but the authorities seemed no closer to solving the case. Then, weeks after Eleanor's death, a breakthrough came, not through an eyewitness or confession, but from an overlooked piece of evidence. The festive ribbon used to bind Eleanor's wrists had been studied extensively, yet one tiny detail had gone unnoticed. A single strand of red thread found tangled in her scarf didn't match the ribbon. Instead, it was identified as a rare fabric used in custom-made Santa costumes. This discovery breathed new life into the case. Investigators combed through local costume shops and rental services, hoping to trace the thread to its source. Their efforts eventually led them to a startling revelation. The fabric was part of a custom costume owned by none other than Linda Harper. The new evidence cast a chilling light on Linda, Greg's wife, who had already raised suspicions with her stoic, guarded behavior during the investigation. Detectives began piecing together a timeline that suggested Linda might have had both the opportunity and the motive to commit the crime. Her marriage to Greg had been strained for months, and several people close to her mentioned that Linda seemed deeply unhappy leading up to Christmas. If she had discovered Greg's affair with Eleanor, the betrayal could have pushed her to the breaking point. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a trail of damning evidence. Surveillance footage from a local hardware store showed Linda purchasing decorative ribbon that matched the type used to bind Eleanor. Receipts confirmed the purchase had been made just weeks before the murder. Additionally, a witness came forward claiming they had seen someone resembling Linda near Pine Lake on Christmas Eve, wearing what appeared to be a Santa costume. The witness hadn't thought much of it at the time, assuming it was a festive gesture, but the detail now took on a sinister significance. When the authorities searched the Harpers' home, they found even more incriminating evidence. In the back of a rarely used closet, they discovered a Santa costume stained with faint traces of blood. Forensic analysis confirmed the blood matched Eleanor's. It was clear the costume hadn't been worn for innocent holiday cheer, but as part of a calculated plan to lure Eleanor to her death. The emerging narrative was both chilling and tragic. Linda, consumed by jealousy and humiliation after learning of Greg's affair, had decided to take matters into her own hands. She had meticulously crafted a plan, one that combined the festive imagery of the season with a brutal act of violence. On Christmas Eve, Linda donned the Santa costume and approached Eleanor under the guise of delivering a gift or extending a holiday gesture. Trusting and unsuspecting, Eleanor followed Linda to the isolated lake where the encounter turned deadly. The intricately carved snowflake ornament found on Eleanor's body was another piece of Linda's twisted scheme. Investigators discovered that Linda had purchased the ornament from Oliver Grayson earlier that year using a fake name. By leaving it on Eleanor's body, Linda had deliberately planted evidence to frame Oliver, knowing his reclusive nature and eerie reputation would make him an easy target. For weeks, her plan had worked. The town had turned its suspicions toward Oliver, allowing Linda to maintain her facade of innocence. When confronted with the mounting evidence, Linda finally confessed. She described her spiraling emotions in the weeks leading up to the murder: anger at Greg's betrayal, resentment toward Eleanor, and a desperate desire to reclaim control over her life. She admitted to carefully orchestrating every detail, from the ribbon to the ornament, to divert attention away from herself. Her confession shocked Pine Hollow, not only for its cold calculation, but for the deep emotional pain that had driven her to such an unthinkable act. Linda's arrest brought some sense of closure to the town, but it also left lingering scars. The image of the perfect Harper family was shattered, exposing the cracks that had been hidden behind closed doors. Greg, who had remained under scrutiny throughout the investigation, was forced to confront the role his actions had played in the tragedy. As Linda was led away in handcuffs, the festive lights that had once brightened Pine Hollow seemed to dim, a sobering reminder of how darkness could seep into even the most joyful seasons. Despite Linda's confession, one haunting question lingered. Could her crime have been prevented if the truth had come to light sooner? For Pine Hollow, the answer didn't matter as much as the painful lessons the case had left behind. Trust had been broken, innocence lost, and a community forever changed. And for those who had loved Eleanor, the knowledge of what she endured in her final moments was a weight that could never fully be lifted. The arrest of Linda Harper sent shockwaves through Pine Hollow, marking the end of an investigation that had gripped the town in fear and suspicion for weeks. For some, the revelation of the killer's identity provided a grim sense of closure. For others, it shattered the fragile trust that once held the community together. The dark truth of Eleanor Davis's murder had been unveiled, but the aftermath left scars that would take far longer to heal. The town struggled to reconcile the image of Linda Harper, the seemingly elegant and reserved wife of a respected businessman, with the reality of her actions. For years, she had been an active member of the community, attending church functions and charity events with Greg by her side. But as her secrets unraveled, it became clear that her life had been a facade. The perfect marriage she portrayed was a fragile illusion, held together by appearances and crumbling under the weight of betrayal. Greg Harper, though not directly involved in the murder, found himself at the center of the town's judgment. His affair with Eleanor had set the events in motion, and many saw his infidelity as the spark that ignited Linda's fury. Public opinion of him shifted rapidly. Once seen as a charming and successful businessman, he was now viewed as a man whose actions had destroyed lives. Greg attempted to distance himself from the tragedy, but Pine Hollow's residents were unforgiving. The Harper name, once synonymous with respectability, became a stain on the town's history. Eleanor's family, meanwhile, was left to grapple with their grief in the wake of the shocking revelations. Her parents, who had spent weeks searching for answers, were devastated to learn that their daughter's death had been the result of such senseless and preventable motives. They struggled to understand how a life filled with so much kindness and generosity could have ended in such violence. The community's outpouring of support brought some comfort, but no gesture could erase the pain of losing Eleanor in such a cruel and public way. The trial of Linda Harper became a media spectacle, drawing attention far beyond Pine Hollow. Reporters descended on the small town, eager to cover every detail of the case that had gripped the nation. Linda's defense team attempted to portray her as a woman pushed to the brink by emotional and psychological distress, arguing that Greg's betrayal had driven her to act out of desperation. Prosecutors, however, painted a different picture, one of a cold and calculating killer who had turned the symbols of Christmas into tools of terror. The jury needed little time to deliberate. Linda Harper was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the residents of Pine Hollow, her conviction brought justice, but not peace. The trial's conclusion marked the end of the legal battle, but the emotional wounds left by the crime lingered long after the verdict was read. As for Greg, he sold his business and left Pine Hollow, unable to face the shame of his actions. Oliver Grayson was exonerated and eventually moved away, seeking peace after being wrongly accused. In the years that followed, Pine Hollow worked to rebuild its sense of safety and community. Eleanor's former students and colleagues organized a memorial in her honor, dedicating a garden at the school where she had taught for so many years. It became a place of reflection and remembrance, a quiet sanctuary where her legacy of kindness and love for teaching could live on. But the story of Eleanor Davis's murder, dubbed the Christmas killer case by the media, remained an enduring shadow over the town. The once bright image of Pine Hollow, with its festive parades and idyllic winter charm, was forever tarnished by the memory of that tragic holiday season. For those who lived through it, the case served as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can hide behind even the most picturesque facades. Years later, the case became the subject of books, documentaries, and true crime discussions, each retelling exploring the complex emotions and human flaws that had led to such a horrifying act. For the people of Pine Hollow, however, it was not a story, it was a painful chapter of their lives, one that served as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the resilience of a community determined to find light in the aftermath of darkness. This chilling case reminds us that beneath the surface of even the happiest holidays, darkness can lurk. Thank you for watching Mystery Minds. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time as we uncover another haunting tale from the world of true crime. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.